All right, guys. So in regards to Palantir, you know, let me say the positive part about trying to bet against Palantir, and then we'll go negative, okay? So if you're going to bet against Palantir, the good thing you have for you is Palantir trades at a very high trailing 12-month PE, forward PE, even if you want to go a 2-year forward PE, right? All those metrics are way above where an average stock trades at in the market. Now, Palantir does have growth exceeding an average stock in the stock market, so do keep that in mind. They're also seen as, you know, people kind of put Palantir more into like a SaaS category, and SaaS stocks usually trade at the highest multiples you'll pretty much find in the market, and it's because these business models are generally very sticky. They lock in big corporate customers for years, sometimes even decades to go in the future. So keep that in mind, but I understand from the point of valuation. The problem is if you listen to any experienced, really short seller ever in history, you can never short just because of valuation. It has to be valuation plus there's really a deterioration in the business model about to happen. That's the only reason you can really ever make really good money in regards to a short position, right? So for instance, I had a short that did really well. Well, I call it a hedge. It's, you know, because I'm kind of looking at it not from necessarily making money. I'm just kind of looking at it from like hedging a portfolio, giving some protection and downside. And something I had late last year into early this year was Tesla, right? Where I was long Tesla, but I also had a put position on Tesla. And that went actually very well, but that's because Tesla's business model was deteriorating at that time, right? And so it made sense. So with Palantir, here's why it's not a very good short, okay? One is the business model deteriorating? No. So you're not going to have that to go off of right off the bat. So that's already trouble. You're already in trouble if you're not getting deterioration in the business model. Second, is a business model on an uptrend or a downtrend? Well, the business model is clearly on an uptrend, and if anything, it might get on more of an uptrend over the remainder of this year as far as growth rates, as far as EPS, all those sorts of things, right? Things are all trending in the right way. Next up, we can think, are there any potential catalysts that could really screw things up if you're going short the stock? There's a huge one, and that is potential S&P 500 inclusion, right? Palantir's market cap's now over $60 billion. Company's obviously very profitable. They've been in the market for many years now at this point in time. It honestly looks like they're primed to get into the S&P 500. So it's not a guarantee they get in the S&P 500, but I would say there's a decent probability. And we do know that likely when that announcement comes, the stock will move up even more, because once you get into the S&P 500, basically funds are forced to buy you, okay? And so there's going to be a massive amount of forced buying. And if Palantir went in at a $60 billion or $70 billion market cap, it's actually a fairly big market cap. It's not something crazy like a $500 billion or something like when Tesla went in, but it's still a big number. So it would be a flood of money that would come in before it went into the S&P 500 and after it went into the S&P 500, right? So not super attractive as far as that goes. Also, we got to keep in mind Palantir is pretty much a direct play on AI and that whole movement, right? And so likely their business is going to continue to uptrend in regards to their fundamentals. Next thing you have working against you, okay, Chris, if you're going to see this video, man, you've got a lot of things working against you here, right? I'll be honest, Chris, if you make money on this, you're lucky, because there's straight luck. There's no skill involved here, man. This is like, going to play the roulette wheel at this point in time, okay? Next part is, we know Wall Street's desperate looking for the next AI plays. And so this is kind of, if you listen to all these Wall Streeters talk over the last couple months, they're looking for these kind of like downstream companies, these like, what's the next thing? Because everybody knows about NVIDIA. Everybody and their grandma knows about NVIDIA, right? Direct AI play. But everybody's now focused on what's after NVIDIA, right? And so that's where companies like Palantir come up. You have somebody like a Dan Ives who's talking up Palantir left and right? More and more of these Wall Streeters getting on board in regards to stock. Then additionally, you have a very stubborn shareholder base, because we know a decent amount of Palantir shareholders are retail, and these folks don't care if Palantir growth rate comes in next quarter 21 or 22 or 23 or 24 or 25%, right? There's a lot of people kind of figuring like this quarter should be good, maybe 24, 25% growth, maybe even the following quarter we see another acceleration up rate. But let's say it comes in at 21%, or all the retail bulls around Palantir are going to say, oh gosh, we're selling out of Palantir. No, of course not. These folks have been through a lot tougher times than if the growth rate came into 21 or 22%, right? So this makes it very, very difficult. Now, interest income. You might say, okay, if the Fed starts lowering interest rates, well, eventually the interest income is not going to be as much. True. That's true, right? But how long until that happens? Treasuries are still going to be yielding a lot. High, Treasury yields for at least probably 12 months, right? Unless the economy completely falls off the rails and the Fed has to immediately lower rates to zero or something like that, which is always a possibility. Outside of that sort of scenario, Palantir is going to continue to bank money on treasuries for probably the next 18 to 24 months, right? Because a lot of treasuries will probably lock up 3 months out, 6 months out, maybe even 12-month out treasuries, right? So the interest income is going to keep pouring in for this company for, I would say, a minimum of a year, but probably closer to a year and a half to 2 years, right? And that's almost a guarantee. So interest income is going to keep pouring in. The balance sheet we know is in a phenomenal state, so you don't have any problems as far as that goes, right? Alex Karp seems very determined to continue to lead this company. It seems like the CFO's locked in, so I don't think you're going to get any shocking change in regards to that, where all of a sudden, Karp's leaving the company or something like that. So you don't have that to go off of also. So this makes it very difficult to really bet against Palantir stock. I think there's a lot of stocks that are easier to bet against. I think you might want to consider Chipotle, right? Chipotle. Well, think about Chipotle for a minute, right? We have a very high valuation in regards to Chipotle. We have a consumer slowdown, which could mean a pullback on Chipotle, right? We also have a dynamic that's playing out where there could actually be the fundamentals deteriorating. It's gone viral all over the internet for the last month or two about Chipotle skimping. It's been a very bad look for their brand, very bad look for their name. So if you want to look for some sort of opportunity in something that's maybe overvalued, I think Chipotle is very interesting. It's already started to fall. The stock's down about 15% in the past, I think, month or so, right? But that one could have a lot further to fall in regards to that, right? And is it at the sort of valuation, let's say, Palantir's at here? By the way, this is 1000xstocks.com. If you want to apply for access in regards to 1000x, you can literally go to 1000xstocks.com, right? 12-month price to sales ratio 7.6 on this baby. P ratio 64. Forward price to sales ratio 6.7. Remember, this is a restaurant chain we're talking about, right? And their growth has been certainly great over the years, but keep in mind, look at like Cheesecake Factory, 0.57, right? And remember, Cheesecake Factory is a lot more than just Cheesecake Factory. They also have several new concepts of essentially they're rolling out that have insane growth expansion, like 10x growth expansion over the coming years as far as the amount of locations they have and those sorts of things, right? And so I don't know, that's just something to keep in mind. Like if you're looking for opportunities, I think there's other opportunities out there. I think Palantir's a tough one. I think you need a lot of luck in regards to this one to really make any substantial money on this one. Now, could Palantir go from 28 to 26? Sure. But is it even worth messing around with, right? I don't know. Could Palantir go from 28 to 27? Sure. But is it worth messing around with? Like, if you want to bet against a stock, I feel like you've got to think minimum 30% downside. That's how I would think about it. Like minimum 30% downside. If you can't see at least 30% downside, is it really worth it, right? Is it really worth it? So I don't know. That's just a little food for thought in regards to that one. I think it's a tough one to bet against at this point in time. Yeah, that's where I'll leave it in regards to that, okay?
Hey, it's Jeremy. I hope you really enjoyed that clip here today. Listen, there are three main areas a long-term investor has to understand. You have to understand financial statements, income statements, balance sheets, cash flows. You have to understand and master portfolio management. And you have to have the ability to project what is possible for companies in the coming years. Bearish scenarios, bullish scenarios. All these skills can be learned, and that's the good news. And I'm still just a regular guy who's out here. I just have a lot of passion for the market. I've learned a lot over the last 15 years. I had a tremendous amount of success, and I have a dedication to teaching people everything I have learned in the past 15 years. If I can do it, you can do it too. You can learn all that's required to become a great investor in my private group. The application is going to be down there in the description area. You can click on that, fill out an application, join us in the private group, get access to all my best course curriculums, teaching you everything that I got in my head, and you get ability to join our 6-figure, 7-figure Hall of Fame. We have such a tremendous Discord. It is incredible. So once again, description area down there, there's a link. You can apply to join my private group in there.
First thing we got to keep in mind here is I thought I would bring this off the top. This is a 5-year chart of the NASDAQ versus Russell. Now, although recently, right, as in the past 5 days, we got a major divergence going on, there's a long way to go in this game. I mean, you could get 2 to 6 more months of this, what we have playing out here, right, happening, right? 5-year span, the NASDAQ should not divert from the Russell that much. It's okay if the NASDAQ outperforms the Russell over a 5-year span, but to this level, this is insanity. This is pure insanity. This is not going to last. It never does. People think many times like these things can just keep going forever and ever. No, these things always revert to the mean. They always end up coming back to reality, right? And that's exactly what we're going to see play out here. If you look at the Russell and the NASDAQ over time, right, they're going to roll pretty much together, right? But you can get these freakish time periods where there's just an insane divergence between the two, and that's what we're going through. And so keep in mind, as the Russell rolls up, right, it's going to go a long way before it gets back close to the NASDAQ again. And don't necessarily expect the Russell to outperform the NASDAQ over the next 5 years, although that is actually a possibility. But don't expect that. Just expect things to get a lot closer, because that spread there will not last. As I've told you guys, it will not last, right? Now, in the past 1 to 2 years, we've seen some game-changing stocks, right? And we're going to get into the next ones up here in just a moment, but I think we got to recap the ones that have been game-changers for the past 1 to 2 years. Because these stocks I'm about to show you, a lot of them, if we go back in time 2 years ago today, right, a lot of these stocks were out of favor. And it's important to understand things can change really rapidly in regards to the market, in terms of people not wanting a piece of stocks and they just can't stop selling them, to all of a sudden everybody's running over themselves, trampling over themselves to buy these sorts of stocks, right? You look at something like a Meta. You couldn't find somebody to be a buyer of the stock 2 years ago other than me. I mean, honestly, and maybe some of you guys out there, let me know if you bought Meta stock back in 2022. If you bought Meta stock in 2022, leave me a comment. Say, I bought Meta stock in 2022. I would love to hear from you guys and see how many people were actually buying Meta stock back in 2022. Leave me a comment down there, okay? But the moral of the story is the far majority of folks were selling that stock nonstop, and they did not stop selling until we got to October, November of that year in 2022, right? They sold all the way till the fourth quarter. They could not stop themselves from selling, right? And it just was like, where's the buying pressure? And then look at how much things have changed. Now we're sitting on a $631,000 gain on Meta stock. We're sitting on 313% up, right? And keep in mind, I didn't even buy all my shares near the lows. I got some shares near the lows. I got some at like 88, 94. I got some at $100 something, right? But keep in mind, I'd been buying that stock for on and off for quite a while. So it's not like I got in right at $88 or something like that, right? That would have been great if I got all my shares at that price. And yet, an absolute game changer of a stock. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy number there, right? I mean, look at that. I put 200 into it, and we're sitting on 631 of gains. I mean, that's absolutely phenomenal, right? Tesla's obviously been a game-changing stock really over the past 10 plus years. But remember, back in early 2023, you could pick up Tesla shares for around $100. Around $100 at that particular time, right? No one wanted a piece of Tesla. You look at a stock like Elf Beauty. I mean, that one's been a tremendous performer. It's my best performing stock as far as percent gain, right? Sitting on around a 2,500% gain. This is a crazy one. Check this out. I put $7,200 into the stock, and I'm sitting on $181,000 of gains. My gosh, like that's pretty wild. That should be a little motivating to folks to like put in some research work. Take this stuff serious, right? Learn everything you got to learn in regards to valuing companies, understand financial statements, understanding conference calls, 10Ks, 10Qs. Like, because when you know, the money's different. The money's different when you start putting in the work. The money's very, very different, right? And check out ELF on a 2-year chart. Here's a 2-year chart of ELF. 474% just in the past 2 years on the stock. And the NASDAQ's had a tremendous past 2 years, right? Up 64%, but it just gets absolutely obliterated by ELF overall. S&P 500's done very well the past 2 years, but it's gotten obliterated by ELF, right? Look at something like Palantir. Palantir stock, now sitting on a 224% gain on the stock, now sitting on $110,000 of gains. And this one I only put in $49,000. So put in 49, sitting on 110 of profits. And there's a lot of Palantir shareholders out there that feel like we're still early days in regards to this Palantir growth story. I'm one of those. Like Palantir's revenues last year are very, very minuscule compared to where Palantir's revenues are going to be in the year 2030, 2033, 2035. Like it's still an early day story in regards to this one. The amount of commercial growth this company's going to have over the next, 5-10 years. Absolutely ridiculous. And so absolutely tremendous gains there, right? Now, to put into, because sometimes you see the numbers on the screen and it takes a bit to set in how game changing these stocks are, right? In these stocks we're about to get into in just a moment, how game changing they could potentially be, right? But $110,000 in gains, you could buy, if you bought a $550,000 house, right? That's a down payment on the house at a 20% down payment, which is very customary in the United States, right? $110,000. And I'm like, what could you get for that? Well, you get this 3,000 square foot house in North Las Vegas here with a pool, but you don't really want to live in North Las Vegas. I'm just going to be honest with you guys, okay? When you move to Vegas, don't move to North Las Vegas. Move to Summerlin. That's where you want to be, okay? So I found this house. They want $634 for it. You might be able to give them down to $550. I doubt it, but if you could, that's a steal deal. They got a nice pool on that one, man. And then you could actually be in Summerlin. But I found you the best deal right here in Henderson. Check out this one. Look at this. This is a little finesse on this one. I'm thinking about buying this myself for a rental and renovating it and doing some work here. You get the pool with it, right? You could probably get it for under $500. You could probably get it $490, $499, something like that, right? You're right outside Seven Hills, which is a very nice area here. And, oh my gosh, look at the land. If you live in the country, you're like, what's the big deal? Land. I'm telling you, in Vegas, you don't get crap for land. Literally, in Vegas, you get a little shoebox for a backyard here, man, because the builders all want to maximize the amount of profit made, so they don't give you any backyard pretty much at all. You just get, basically the house, and they build everything as close as they possibly can, so when you can get that sort of land in somewhere like Henderson, woo, that's a steal deal there. But anyways, the moral of that story was, let it sink in, how much, these stocks can kind of change the game for you, right? NVIDIA. Unfortunately, not a game changer for me. It took me much longer to react to what was going on in regards to NVIDIA and how lasting that really was. So I've made good money on NVIDIA, 44% in the public account, right? But it's not like I can really call stock a game changer for me, but it's been a game changer for others, right? Look at the 2-year return on NVIDIA. This is a 2-year return, 700%. Now keep in mind, NVIDIA was not some secret company. NVIDIA was already, if you knew anything about the stock market, you knew about NVIDIA 2 years ago. That was not some I've never heard of that company. What do they do, right? It was not NVIDIA at all. NVIDIA was already a very famous stock in the stock market, right? And, here's the deal. Most people that invest in the S&P 500, for instance, right, if you just invest in an index fund, you're hoping to basically double your money every 7 years, right? That's kind of how you think about it. You want to double your money every 7 years, maybe 8 years in the S&P 500. That's the goal. And NVIDIA gave you a 700% return, not a 100% return, a 700% return in 2 years. This is why individual stock picking can go a long way. And when done right, it is an absolute game changer. And, how do you mitigate the risk of downside in regards to these individual stocks? Stay diversified. That's why you see me. How many stocks do I own? Probably 20 plus stocks. That's how I mitigate my risk. So then if I get it wrong, because I will get stocks wrong, no one's perfect. That's the magic in this game. And people will say, well, that stock you got wrong over there, and you got that stock wrong. Well, who cares? If I got 4 stocks wrong out of 24 stocks I own, who cares? I got 20 right. If I got 8 stocks wrong out of 24 stocks, that means I got 16 right. And especially as long as where I'm putting the bigger money is correct, game changer. Let this all sink in for a moment here, and this is why the work is worth it. A lot of people get so lazy, I don't know if I want to put in the work to individual stock picking. I gotta listen to a conference call. It's gonna take from my TikTok time. I can't watch as much Netflix. Well, you could do a lot more fun things than watching TikTok and Netflix if you had real money, right? Think about that. Let that sink in for a moment here. The work is worth it, but you gotta know what you're doing. If you have no clue, how to value a stock, if you have no clue on how to do these financial statements, this is all stuff I literally go through all this in the course curriculums in my private group. I teach all this stuff. I literally teach all this stuff in there. there's no excuse on I can't learn it. Dude, I literally teach all this stuff so you can understand all this inside and out. But, a lot of people are just I can't learn that. Okay, you're not going to ever have big money. That's all I want to tell you about that, right? SMCI stock, look at the 2-year return on this one, 1,600%. And also let this hit you for a moment, right? You're seeing all those returns. I wouldn't even say we've had a great economy in the last 2 years. Would you say our economy's been great the last 2 years? I don't think so. We've had a pretty low unemployment rate, but real wages have not been in a good place the last 2 years. Consumer confidence, consumer sentiment numbers have been horrible the last 2 years. A lot of earnings for a lot of companies have not been good the last 2 years. And despite super high inflation, despite Fed funds rate being at the highest we've seen in how long? 20 years? 20 plus years? Despite all that, there were still game-changing stocks out there that could have changed your life for the better, right? And if you got to participate in some of those stocks like I have, I mean, the last 2 years for you have looked really dang good, right? If you haven't been able to participate in those stocks the last 2 years, no bueno, right? All you feel is like, I'm losing to inflation, I'm not making any money out there. This stuff matters, right? Even look at a boring stock. Toll Brothers, the home builder, so boring. 175% gain in the past 2 years. And remember what we spoke about. People that invest in the S&P 500 are hoping for 100% gain every 7 to 8 years. And this boring, sleepy Toll Brothers has given you 175% just in a 2 year. In an economy that people don't even view as good for the last 2 years. Let that sink in. In a housing market that's been absolutely not good the last 2 years, right? Mortgage applications have recently hit pretty much all-time lows. Like absolutely incredible, right? Look at Wingstop. We're talking chicken wings. 288% gain on that stock. Oh my gosh. In 2 years for chicken wings? Come on, man. That's insane, right? All I can hope is Cake gets that sort of love and that sort of respect in the future, right? And I think I have a belief that someday people are going to understand the opportunity with North Italia. They're going to understand the opportunity with Flower Child and how big those brands are going to be. And at that moment, Cake's valuation is going to explode to the upside. Oh my gosh, I love this. $9,999 gain. Oh, I love all those nines. That is so sick. You know I love when it's all same numbers laid out like that. That is so freaking cool. I'm glad I screenshot that. I just realized that. So some days people are going to understand this opportunity in regards to Cake, and that stock's going to explode to the upside. But it takes a while for people to really understand it, right?